Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Clock Talk. I'm Logan with Losine Clockworks, and today we are talking about anniversary clocks. Got a question from a guy in Slovenia, which, to be honest, I had no idea where Slovenia was on a map, but he sent a question in to us, and it's just super neat to see people from all over the world with this interest in clocks and to just be able to help people out in other countries even, and to learn more about the world and meet new people. So super excited. And he's got some great questions about his anniversary clock that's running way too fast, like twice too fast. And gains like 5 hours every day or 10 hours every day. So we're going to talk through that, and I'll talk through the issues that it could have been and the issues that it seems to be, and a few other questions that he had. Okay, so his pendulum was turning about 180 degrees. So it would do something kind of like this and then go back. So that's an issue because it should be turning more than that. About 270 is typical for an anniversary clock, maybe even more toward the 360 range. And that's total rotation. So if you're doing 360 degrees, that's 180 degrees, 180 degrees this way, and then back to center, 180 degrees that way. So that'd be a full rotation. 270 means you do, that, and then back to here, and then back to here. His is only doing about 180. And it was running super fast. And so the question is it an escapement issue or is it a spring issue? So the suspension spring is this right here on an anniversary clock. It's about as thick as a human hair. It's very, very, very thin, about 2,000 of an inch thick. And very easy to break and very easy to get wrong. They have to be just the right thickness, just the right stiffness. They have to be temperature compensating. So as the temperatures change, this spring material that they use is able to compensate for that. So pretty complicated little piece of metal and very easy to get wrong. The other issue could be in the escapement. So the escapement is right here. It's the funny gear with all the pointy teeth. And you can see it through this hole right there. You see that stuff moving inside of there. That's the escapement. And what it looks like a little bit bigger is something like this. If you want more info on escapements and how to adjust them in the field, go look up our escapement video. It's called, I think, Escapement Basics or something like that. And it'll discuss how all it's supposed to work. But in a nutshell, since the clock was running super fast, my first thought was maybe it's the escapement. Because what can happen is you have an entry pallet and an exit pallet. If that tooth lands on or below the knee, so this little angle right here is the knee, and if the tooth lands below that, what it'll do is it'll just immediately push the pendulum back the other way. And then if it lands on this one, it'll immediately push it back the other way. And what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to land in the deadbeat portion, which would be the straight part right here on the side, in which case it can do this, and then the pendulum's still free to move without being affected by the escape wheel until it gets to this point on the knee, at which point it throws the pendulum back the other direction. And again, go look up that escapement video and we'll discuss that in more detail. So that was my first thought. That can make a pendulum run really fast. So he sent me a video, and that was not the case. We were able to look through these holes here and see that the pallets were landing correctly. The other thing that we could see is the escape wheel, that gear with all the pointy teeth. When that escape wheel would hit the pallet, it would stay perfectly still as the pallet moves, and then it was free to go. If it's incorrectly adjusted, it's going to hit that knee, then the escape wheel will recoil a little bit, and then it'll go forward when it ticks. And it wasn't doing that. The escape wheel tooth would hit, stay perfectly still, and then go to the next spot. So that tells me it's probably not an escapement issue. It is probably a suspension spring issue. So anytime you're working on an anniversary clock, one of the first things that we do is we'll look up the info in the book. This is the gold standard for anniversary clocks. It's made by a company called Horolovar, Horolovar, backwards in the selfie camera. Sorry about that. But this book has tons of info. This is the 10th edition. You can find the other editions very easily, pretty affordably as well, and most editions will be just fine. And what it does, it tells you everything you need to know about anniversary clocks. It tells you how to adjust them, repairs that you need to do, frequently asked questions, stuff like that. And what we use it for the most is finding suspension springs, beat rates, stuff like that. So let me walk you through that. Whenever you are identifying a anniversary clock in this book, you need to find the plate. So there's pages and pages and pages of these plates. And what they've done is they've gone through and found just about every single anniversary clock you can imagine that is known to the world And almost all of them are documented in this book. And so you can look up the back plate, which is this right here, in this book, and you'll find a back plate that looks just like it or very, very similar to it. When you do that, that is how you know which clock you're dealing with, what spring it gets, how fast it runs, all that sort of thing. So he sent me a picture of his back plate right here, and we are going to compare it to the book. And I found out that that plate was a 1406H, I believe, which would be this one right here. So we've got 4 holes for the mounting. We've got a winding arbor, another hole. Let's start looking at those in the picture. Sure enough, it's got all those holes there. We've got the winding hole right there, and another hole right there. I'm not sure what that's for. Not actually the winding hole. You've got an arbor here, another hole here, and we just keep following these all the way up and check everything. Check this notch right here where the suspension spring or the escapement is. Check all those things, check the words on the plates and stuff like that, and that will narrow it down from all these options to just this one. So that tells us that this particular clock is a 1406H. That is helpful to know because now we can look up info on it. So down below here, it tells us use a 0.0023 inch thick spring. That is 2.3 thousandths, not 23 thousandths, 2.3 thousandths. So it'd be 23 ten thousandths of an inch, very, very thin, or 0.058 millimeters if you use the metric system. And that is called Unit 5E. So if you're buying that spring from somewhere online, you can just look for a 5E, and that will be the whole assembly. So you've got the spring, the little piece at the top, the fork, and the piece at the bottom. I'll show you a picture of that in a minute. And then it says see Appendix 77 for more details and info. So let's go over here and find Unit 5E. So we've got a bookmark in this page, because here are all the suspension springs that Huralvar makes or knows of. And super, super helpful because they are drawn to scale. And so we're going to come here to 5E, and there it is right there. So you have the top piece, the fork, and the bottom piece. And that's the completed unit assembly. And it will also tell us here 5E, 5CD are interchangeable. This clock should run at 10 beats per minute. That's super helpful because now we know how to set the speed of the clock to know if it's going fast or not. So he was measuring about 16 beats per minute, expecting 8, but actually it should be 10 instead of 8. So we can measure that later. So super, super helpful. And like I said, also there's appendices and lots of frequently asked questions, stuff like that, that will help tremendously if you're working on these as a hobby or a profession. Highly recommend that book. So now we have identified the spring. And so the next question is, how do you replace it? Well, like I said, you can buy the completed assembly. If you buy that from Huralvar, that is, they might have it, they might not have it. You can get it from several other suppliers. The danger is that Huralvar, from what I'm told, they make the best suspension springs that are the most accurate and the most reliable. I have gotten suspension springs that were not Huralvar brand, and they were wildly off. So what I've been told is the best recommendation is just buy the Huralvar springs because they are the best. So you might be able to buy a completed assembly from them, or from a lot of suppliers, you can buy the individual springs. And they're not super expensive. You get about 3 or 4 in a pack, and there is the suspension spring. So all you got to do is take out your old spring, which if you're watching this video, you probably have a clock that has a broken suspension spring because they usually are broken. So take out the old one and take the little pieces off the end. There's just some little screws holding them, and then put this spring in. Now, it sounds super easy. It's not. So there are a few tricks that are important to get right. First of all, the length is fairly important. And you know what the length is because we have that scale drawing in here. And so you can literally just lay the spring on top of it and see how long that spring needs to be and where all the pieces need to be adjusted to. As you're thinking about the length, there are 2 factors. One is you don't want it to be too short, and the other is you don't want it to be too long. If it's too long, the pendulum is going to drag on the bottom of the cup down here. If it's too short, it's going to keep the pendulum up here and rub. So you got to make sure that spring is the right length. Now, beyond that, the length really doesn't matter that much. In theory, it does. It will change it a little bit, but in reality, it'll change it a few beats per hour. Really not much that matters. Every time I've had a spring that was not running the right speed, the length didn't make a difference at all. It was the thickness that mattered a lot more. So when you're assembling the spring, make sure you get it to approximately the right length. Don't like drive yourself crazy trying to be exact to the right 10,000th of an inch on the length. That doesn't matter. Just get it pretty close. Get the spring so that it goes into the piece and doesn't hit where the pins go through, and doesn't go through the holes, anything like that. But just get it to where the blocks will hold it securely and it won't interfere with anything else in the block. There's usually holes through it, like for this suspension spring. This suspension screw or pin right here. There's a hole that goes through the top block for that. Don't let the spring go up in there, and you'll be fine. It's really not that hard. We also have a little jig that we just put on a scrap board, and it's got a couple holes so that you can put the pins. You can pin those top and bottom block together, and put the spring in there. Use a little bit of masking tape, tape that spring down, and then you can get that into the blocks a lot more easily without it getting all squirrely on you. You got to be super careful when you're tightening those screws down because you don't want to accidentally twist it and twist the block and bend or break that spring. So just be careful as you're doing that. What else? So then as far as the length goes, like I said, fairly easy. Just put it back together according to that book and get it to where the pendulum's not touching the top or the bottom. Fork position also doesn't matter too much. That is something that can be adjusted later. That book discusses how to do that. But most of the time the fork doesn't matter a ton as far as the height on the spring goes. If you have issues and it won't run, then you can adjust where that goes. But get it to where it is touching the fork, and if you have the book, measure it against that. And of course, you can always mimic your old spring. If you have an old one, just put it back where that one was. The thickness, though, that's really, really important. So you want to order what the book says to order, which in this case was a 0.0023 inch spring. And then if it's still running too fast, which does happen sometimes, then you got to take some sandpaper and sand that spring to be thinner than 2/1000 of an inch thick. So it can be tricky, it can be tedious, it can be easy to break. We typically use 400 grit sandpaper and just sand it until we get the clock running the right beat rate. The rule of thumb that we've run across, your mileage may vary, but we find that about 2 strokes of 400 grit sandpaper is about 1 beat per hour. So if you're running 10 beats per hour fast, then you need to do about 20 strokes of the sandpaper. If you're 100 beats per hour fast, which is usually the case when we're having issues like this, then that would be 200 strokes of sandpaper up and down. What else? Yeah. So that is how to reassemble a new suspension spring. So then you've got the fork here. So the way this looks is about normal. And like I said, the position doesn't matter a ton, but it can affect things. As long as you're close to the middle, that's usually okay. What matters more, though, is when the fork turns all the way to one side or the other, that pin still has just a little bit of slop. So if that fork gets to where that pin gets in a bind, that's going to cause issues. So you might need to spread the teeth on that fork just a little bit so that the pin has just a little bit of wiggle room when it's all the way in one position and the other. Okay, now some other questions you had are, how does the speed actually change when you adjust the pendulum? And before we get to that, let me just state that everything we've been talking about with the speed that it runs, you need to be doing that with the pendulum at its midpoint. So this pendulum can vary about 150 to 100 beats per hour, something like that. Not a ton. And so whenever you're trying to dial in your spring situation, you want to put your pendulum in its midpoint, which means that this piece that goes up and down needs to be on the middle of its travel. Okay, so they all have something like that. A lot of times they'll have a slot that goes through. Oh, let's see here. Well, for sake of time, a lot of them will have a slot that goes through the arm and a screw that goes up and down in that slot, and that is what moves the ball in or out. And so you want to put that screw right in the middle of that slot so that you have an accurate representation of what your speed actually is. If you have it all the way to one end or the other, well, then you put your spring in, it's not going to be running the right speed, and then you can't adjust it anymore. And if you sand your spring down or change springs or something like that, well, all you're going to be doing is adjusting it to the end of its range already. So put it in the middle. You do that by turning this knob. It'll have an A and an R or F and an S for fast, slow, advanced, retard. And it will just turn this until this is centered, and then check the speeds. Without a microset or something like that, it can be kind of hard to check the speed, but you can just count in a minute how many rotations of the pendulum you get, and that will get you pretty close. And then, of course, let it run overnight and see how accurate it is. And of course, that takes a lot longer. But what that's actually doing, let's zoom in here. So there's some kind of mechanism, and there is some variance. They're not all the same. But there's some sort of mechanism that will slide up and down on the screw threads right here. And when it does, it will move these weighted balls in and out. And so think of it like a ballerina who's spinning. When she puts her arms out, she slows down. When she pulls them in, she goes faster. And that's exactly what this is doing. So if you turn it so that the balls go outward, then it's going to go slower, and vice versa. He was also wondering if this can be disassembled, and a lot of the times, yes, they can. These are little nuts on top that will come off. In fact, this one's loose already. Look at that. By the way, I'm moving the guillotine here to hold this pendulum in place. Some of these anniversary clocks have this guillotine, which is really nice. You got to lift the pendulum up a little bit, and then it goes into a slot in the pendulum, and that keeps this thing nice and secure. You can put it in the car. You don't have to worry about anything happening to it. If it doesn't have that, you have to be either take the pendulum off or be a lot more careful. Anyway, so this comes off. Then these brass balls separate into two halves, and there's a lead ball in the middle. And that's how that comes apart. And then you're left with this arm right here. And a lot of times they'll have some screws that hold them together or pins that you can push out. Sometimes they don't, and they're not very disassemblable. This one in particular, I don't know. Most of the time you don't need to disassemble them that far. If you're trying to polish them, you can usually get it polished well enough without further disassembly. But yes, they can be disassembled, some more so than others. All right, I think we pretty well covered all those questions. If you have more questions or you have an anniversary clock you're working on, please comment below so that we can see what you're working on. Or if you got questions, we can try to help you out. We try to answer as many questions on YouTube comments as we can. We aren't always able to get to them all, but we do our best. So please comment below and let us know if you have questions on this clock or any other clocks. And we'll see you next time.